Hello, Space Junkies, and welcome to episode 163 of What a Piece of Junk, the Star Wars podcast here on the Fandom Podcast Network. I'm your host, Scott Butman, and joining me, as always, is my original podcast co-pilot, Mr. Derek Marsh. Derek, how's it going out there?
It's going good. It's starting to feel like spring. We hit 80 degrees the past couple of days, which was great.
Whoa.
And it was not the type where you get in the summer where you got the humidity, right? It was still kind of the cool breeze and everything. So it was perfect. Started doing a little bit of cleaning in the garage. Started prepping for here in a few weeks. 2 weeks. Sophia will be on spring break. So we're trying to line up a couple of activities, things to do. And then I've got some travel coming up and whatnot. And then, it's crazy to think. We'll be hitting summer here already. But as we're recording this on the 30th of March, we're basically already a quarter way through 2025 already. So, but what comes with the new month in April will be Andor season 2.
That's right, and that's what we're going to talk about on tonight's episode of the show. And joining us to discuss Andor Season 2 is our very own Dave Filcloni, Mr. Miracle, the gooey, chewy man of 1,000 nicknames. It's Nathan Miracle. What's up, Nathan?
Hey, doing well. It's been pretty warm here, too. Almost summer-like, but not quite summer yet. Although later this week, it's supposed to get up to 89 degrees.
Wow.
So, yeah, we kind of went straight from winter to it's hot.
Well, we here over in the western part of North Carolina, so a little bit removed from you, did have definite moments of spring this week because we had pollen galore.
We've got
everything
that.
I could think of was blooming. My stormtrooper car looked more like a sand trooper car because it was yellow instead of a nice pearl white. And then my sinuses were all just like, it's springtime. I'm telling you, it's springtime. And I was like, you don't have to tell me so much. Anyway, this morning, Mita woke up and was telling me it was time to go to church. And she was all, hey, we're supposed to go to church. And I'm like, who are you? How did you get into my bedroom? Anyway. But we will be talking about some Andor Season 2 action here on the show, this episode of the podcast. And we're going to start out, though, by doing a slight retrospective of Andor Season 1 because unlike some other Star Wars streaming series, it's been quite a long time between the release or end of Season 1 and the release of Season 2. Help me out, guys. When did Season 1 end?
2021.
Was it? Yeah. Oh, my gosh. 4 years ago? Jeez.
Well, you have to think, right? We had a lot come up with the strikes and some of the other things that came up recently, So, but it'll be almost 4 years.
And they started working on this season in 2022, so it's not like they tried to delay.
Yeah, they started filming in 2023. Yeah,
they've had a lot of issues.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it's going to be worth the wait, but let's talk a little bit about Season 1 Andor first, because like I said, it's been 4 years, so people might need a bit of a refresher. I know I did, so I went and watched some highlights, and I tried to rewatch the whole season this week, but I got a little busy and didn't have time to rewatch the entire season. We'll just go ahead and do our traditional 5 questions, but instead of limiting it to one particular episode, let's go ahead and have it apply to the entirety of Season 1. So, Nathan, let's start with you. What did you like best about Season 1 of Andor?
Well, the first thing I'm going to list is something that wasn't in Andor, and that was Jedi. I loved that we didn't have the Force as a major thing. We didn't have a lot of lightsabers. Star Wars is a big place, and I do love stories with Jedi in them, but I also love that we got a story that doesn't focus on the Jedi because we get so much of that in Star Wars. And I totally understand why. If you're going to write a Star Wars story, you'll want to use the most unique element of Star Wars, but that doesn't always make for the best story. So I'm glad that they resisted the urge to just throw some random Jedi in there. But the other thing I liked most was Stellan Skarsgård's character, Luthen Rael. He was a real standout character.
Mm-hmm.
Great character to understand, what it took to really form the rebellion, to get all these disparate factions of resistance together, working towards one common goal.
Yeah, Luthen strikes me as being a big time adjacent to, if not completely and totally in bed with Saw Gerrera and his partisans, who are way more violent and ruthless, if you will, about how they're going to overthrow the Empire. Do you think that's a good categorization of Luthen?
I'd say Luthen himself is ruthless, but he also understands that he needs to present as not being ruthless to certain other I don't want to say members of, but see, they're not members yet because they're not united.
Founding
yet.
councilmen,
to
factions,
prospective members, to other factions. He needs to not appear as militant because that's not what they want. He's definitely a chameleon. He shows different faces to different people, including to the Empire, where he appears to be a loyal businessman selling antiquities, and please don't mind the fact that all of these resistance-y people are coming to my shop and buying certain items.
Yeah, buying things.
And then returning them.
Yes. Constantly in and out. I mean, what's with the idle rich and their taste in antiquities? Okay, I'll go next. The thing that I liked best about season 1 of Andor was how it showed all those different groups and why they were all motivated to oppose Palpatine's new order. I loved the kid who wrote the manifesto. What was his name? Ned? I should have looked this up beforehand. One of you guys can find it and tell me. Anyway, when he wrote his manifesto about why we need to rebel against the Empire, and then he talked a lot about how the Empire was going to overload you with all these different atrocities, one right after another, so that you're kind of having like compassion fatigue or outrage fatigue. It was just so in concert with the way that certain things were happening in our own world at the same time. And it very much reminded me of the OG Star Wars trilogy, especially the first and second, so 4 and 5 of episodes of the Skywalker saga, where George Lucas himself was trying to present that idea, that viewpoint of oppression and injustice, and how the nature of rebelling against a larger empire was such an important part of that story and an important part of America's story at that time, but not in the way that a lot of people in the 1980s wanted to think. They liked the idea that the Cold War was being used as the basis for this metaphor in Star Wars. They had this idea that the evil empire, as Ronald Reagan said while he was president, was, of course, the Soviet Union. And then we, as the Americans, were somehow supposed to be corollary to the rebellion. But even as a 10, 12-year-old kid, I was like, well, that's not right. Because the Empire has all these super weapons, and they're constantly aiming them at the rebellion or anybody else who dares to oppose them, whether it be the Death Star 2, or just the Executor and all those walkers, and just the Imperial war machine, right? But in the Cold War, the United States and USA and USSR were able to oppose each other as equals, right? Actually, we found out much later, after the end of the Cold War and the collapse of the Soviet Union, we were never equals with the Soviets. They were always way, way below us. And their entire thing about having the same nuclear arsenal or the same number of troops and tanks and whatnot was a bunch of misdirection. When we look at the records that we were able to see after places like Romania and Hungary fell, and, Eastern Germany was no longer communist, and people could actually access those records. A lot of the nuclear weapons and the other weapons of mass destruction that the USSR supposedly had pointed at the United States were just a ruse. It was way less than what was listed in the SALT treaties and all those things that Reagan and Gorbachev signed with each other. We always were armed to the teeth back then, and they hardly ever were. Not saying that they couldn't have had enough missiles to destroy us 1,000 times over, but we had enough missiles to destroy them 10,000 times over, or, whatever the actual number may be. But in the Star Wars metaphor, there's no way that the USA could have been the plucky rebellion, because we weren't rebelling against them. We were an equal, or even better, superpower. But what George Lucas had been trying to show us was more an allegory to the Vietnam War, which is because, he wrote Star Wars in the 1970s, not during the 1980s. And so it was always more about a guerrilla group of fighters opposing this massive, way overpowered empire. And so it was more about the VC opposing the United States in Vietnam. And Andor, to me, has done such a good job, not just the show, but the character himself in his role in Rogue One as well, of how that's the kind of mentality that they would have in order to really have success against the Empire. And of course, as a OG Star Wars fan who is drawn to the spirituality of Star Wars as well, when it comes to the Force, they never would have succeeded in overthrowing the Empire just using those Viet Cong type tactics, those guerrilla war tactics that Andor and his friends all do, because they needed Luke to fulfill his part of the prophecy of the Chosen One to really overthrow things. And the reason, of course, that George Lucas wrote it in that way, adding in that spiritual element and the element of prophecy, was because he was influenced, amongst many other things, like Kurosawa and samurai films, by Dune. And so having a guerrilla warfare style Star Wars series coming back in an era when Dune, as a video live action series, is doing so well, it's just like chef's kiss for a 1980s nerd such as myself. And so the main thing that I liked about Andor was continuing that guerrilla warfare theme with that mixed in element of the spirituality. Luke is the Ghassan al-Ayyib, as Javier Bardem would say in the most recent Dune films. I'm just on cloud nine that we're getting more of Andor. I am, as Derek posted in our Facebook group for What a Piece of Junk, kind of sad that Tony Gilroy has decreed I'm never working on Star Wars again. I don't necessarily believe that this is true. I've been around long enough to see a lot of no more. Exactly. I've been around long enough to see a lot of no more Star Wars. And this is the last Star Wars. We totally mean it this time.
And Harrison Ford is never coming back.
That's right.
Again.
Yes. And Bret Hart will never be in the WWE Hall of Fame. Wait. Anyways, all right. So I've rambled enough. Did anybody find the name of our author?
Yes.
Karis Nemec.
Nimic. Thank you very much, guys. Yes.
And the manifesto itself is the trail of political consciousness.
Yep. Perfect title for a manifesto, because it's like way too erudite to make anyone pay attention to it.
Conscientiousness.
Yes. There you
Sorry,
go.
not consciousness.
Freedom is an illusion.
Even more
obtuse. Yeah. Okay, Derek, what did you like best about Andor season 1?
Well, I mean, anyone that's followed the show and followed us on What a Piece of Junk on the Facebook group, if we have any new listeners out there, welcome, Space Junkies. We appreciate you tuning in. But I will say, I mean, to me, Andor and Rogue One are the best Star Wars that Disney's put out. Simply because it's Star Wars for adults. Right. I mean, I'm not saying kids can't watch Andor because, right, it doesn't deal with no swearing like we talked about, which was a phenomenal thing. There is no nudity, very minimal violence in a sense. But it's just good dialogue. It's that spy thriller, drama, political ploy type deal, action, where it's about the writing and the characters. It's not about the pew pew and my lightsaber and the whoosh, even though we got some really cool action sequences. We got really awesome with Luthen's ship when it does its own lightsabers on the side and it blows up the TIE fighters. Right. But those were just small payoffs, right? When the big payoffs were the character development, the suspense, where was it going? But yeah, I mean, just Andor season 1 is a masterpiece in my mind. I watch it every year. I watch it as often I watched the original trilogy at this point. This was the 5th time I've watched it now. So it's never, as Nathan says, oh darn, you got to twist my arm and make me watch it again, right? So
oh no.
So when we joked about it, saying, let's rewatch it before we record this episode. This was last week, and I'm just like, all right, challenge accepted. So all I did that Sunday last week, a week from today, just started watching 3 episodes a day. I got it done in 4 days. I actually had to push Daredevil off because I was like, nope, I'm watching Andor. It's just everything about it, right? It's the visuals, it's the characters, it's the scenery, the things that they have about Ferrex, and we get to see a bit more of Coruscant and the ISB side of things. It's the interaction with the characters. Like I said, it's just good writing, and that's all we've really asked for in Star Wars, right? Like I want fun, don't get me wrong. We have some of our fun stuff. I mean, we talked about Solo was great for that. Obviously we've gotten some really good scenes with some of the other television shows. um, you know, but really what made Mandalorian season 1, season 2, and just as well as Andor season 1 was it was good writing. It was a complete, as we're going, it's going to be a complete story, right? But really season 1 is self-contained to some degree, right? We know with season 2 it's going to be basically, 4 mini arcs over the 4 years leading up to, or at least 4 time periods leading up to right before Rogue One takes place. But I mean, everything you guys talked about it. Obviously, Skarsgård is just phenomenal in the way he played Luthen, and the things he said, like he's made peace with him being basically the bad guy in order to do the good things. He knows he's got to be the bad guy. But to your point, the way he portrays when we first see Luthen after the end of episode 3 and going to episode 4, and he's not going to be the military spy, instigator type deal. He's got to be the shopkeeper, and he's putting on the wig, and he's putting on the rings and the stuff, and he's doing the hot washcloth, and then he just, like, you could see it, like it's almost like the yin and the yang, or the sad face and the happy face in tragic theater type deal, where he's just playing this other character compared to who he needs to be. And it's that great interaction that you're getting, especially, the one thing I loved about this, and this is what I enjoyed so much about the Clone Wars animated TV show, and to some degree even Rebels had a little bit, but not as much that we got to see in that. But it's the side of what we got a good side in the prequels, which is the Senate and the political side of things. Genevieve O'Reilly as Mon Mothma was fantastic in seeing where you had to play that game of politics, right? That game of spy thriller, who's going to stab you in the back, who's your ally, the things that they had to do to, basically run the rebellion, right? Be that power broker, those types of things, was just, great. And then I really enjoyed just how we had these mini arcs. It's kind of weird because kind of after the first 6 episodes, you kind of have these 2 mini arcs. And then you have the heist, which obviously I love a heist movie. So that was, obviously with episode 4, 5, and 6. But then 7's kind of this, as they call it, the announcement. It was kind of like this break in the middle. But then you have another mini arc in 8, 9, and 8, 9, and 10. And then 11 and 12 is kind of its own. But if you watch it back with episode 7, it almost makes it its own arc that way. If you take out 8, 9, and 10 as its own. So it's interesting to watch it that way. But just overall, it's just phenomenal. Like I said, I can only go back to it. It's obviously the characters, it's the director, but at the end of the day, it was the writing, it was the story. You had, people who were very passionate, obviously, that got to what you talked about, Scott, about that, more of what Star Wars was about. Again, wars in the title. It's about that, right? And the nitty gritty and the things that the rebellion people had to do. And this was just, like I said, that powder keg. And then you got some beautiful speeches, right? When you have Marv give the end speech at the end, and just fight the Empire, and you just see everyone, right? And just go full force against them. And it's phenomenal. And I love how they even go back with the back and forth from when he was a kid and when he was rescued and the things they had to do when he was raised up in Ferrex. And then the last thing I'll compliment, and we can go on to the next one, is just the score. I mean, again, it was beautiful. It was great. I like it when they, obviously John Williams is the GOAT. Zimmerman's a great person as well. And what he's done across the movies and industry within, especially the Disney properties and stuff like that. But, phenomenal for what they have with these young and up and coming composers that compose these Star Wars TV shows.
Yeah, totally. I love what you talked about with Luthen doing the transformation scene, not just the wig and the rings, but that whole washing his face. It was like such a great metaphor, a great visual cue, almost like he's putting on a mask, even though it's no physical mask, but like it's an emotional and personality mask. And so that means he's kind of doing a modification of mask acting, like we heard, various other Star Wars actors like Sam Witwer were discussing when Hayden Christensen put on the Darth Vader helmet for the Kenobi series, and we saw Christensen, with a slightly better script, a very better script than what he had in, say, I don't know, Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. And he's doing mask acting as Vader, but he's almost doing something more dramatic and conveying more emotion as Vader as he ever did as young Anakin Skywalker in Episode 2, or even, some parts of Episode 3. And so Luthen is kind of continuing that tradition, right? And we don't have much in the way of masked characters in Andor, like physical masks like Vader or stormtroopers. I think there's some stormtroopers occasionally. But there's not as much of that happening. There's occasional death troopers, but really it's more about that gritty realism style, right down to the fact that you can see people's faces. And so they're able to, have that concern, that determination, that despair, that elation, that rage, that joy, all of it etched on their faces and like really visible and gritty, Same deal, of course, with Rogue One. You got to see the faces of all those people that are in the doomed strike team of Rogue One as they are, they're on Scarif, and we know that they're not going to survive, right? There's just no way that they can pull it off. And because they're not doing a religious prophecy part of the rebellion like Luke and his friends, they don't survive. They all died. He's dead, she's dead, they're all dead. So there's nothing left of them except their memory and the cause they fought for. And Luthen's speech about "I'm doomed to use my enemy's tools against them" means that I'm pretty sure there's going to be nothing left of him except his ideals and the impact he has on the rebellion either. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they arrange it all as these mini movies, basically, as we go through various story arcs. And there's a time jump between each one. But we had some time jumps between episodes of Andor in season 1 as well. Which brings me to my next question, which is, of course, going to be, what did you like least about season 1? So I'm going to go ahead and go first, because mine's pretty quick. I did not enjoy the time jumps. I liked being able to see more of what happened in Andor's story and his life, but I would have preferred much more straight up, story arc, rising action, climax, denouement kind of thing on a more traditional linear timeline. I realize that that's not actually that in vogue in current Hollywood. I mean, almost basically since the turn of the century, Hollywood has been moving more toward non-traditional, non-linear storytelling. But I can still have my opinions and say, I'd like for you guys to go back to that. Thank you very much. I'd also like for Star Wars movies to return to being released in May, but I don't always get what I want when it comes to Star Wars movies or Hollywood in general. My only other complaint about season 1 of Andor is the level of, I don't want to say violence, but severity almost. Things were happening in Andor that felt like, ooh, this is way more heavy and dark than Star Wars has ever been. It's the grim, dark nature of, say, Warhammer 40K was sort of seeping its way into the storyline, especially when we had that guy torturing the woman who would be Andor's girlfriend and playing that sound for her of, the horrible things, crying and screaming as their parents were killed as some alien race. And they were using it to torture her to try and get her to reveal some stuff about Andor and the possible rebellion. I can't remember that character's name, but if you guys can check it out, someone can chime in. But what you got, Nathan? I can't hear you.
Sorry, Bix Kayleen.
Bix, thank you very much. So yeah, you guys recall in that episode where Andor had been sneaking into the almost smokestack, but it was actually an antenna stack, and like sending out secret messages to people. And so one of the Imperials was kind of, tracking her down and realized, hey, something weird is going on with the radio signals here. And then they captured her, and she wouldn't talk because she legitimately didn't really know that much, as we recall. But Interrogators for political regimes that are really hard-nosed don't always care that much that you don't really know anything. They're going to torture you until they get some sort of confession, which is why civilized societies have realized that torture is not a useful tool for coercing confessions, because people will say whatever they have to say, whether it's true or not, to get out of the torture. And that's exactly what Bix ends up having to do before she goes mad. But the method of torture is really, really dark. It's basically fostering the despair and suffering of an alien race onto her. An alien race that might have been wiped out, by the way. The Empire, just another week. So just another genocide, right? And so that increases the level of despair when they explain that to her. This is the kind of thing that I would have expected to see in, say, a portion of Dune. Spoilers for those of you who haven't read the 1960s and 70s novels from Dune. The God Emperor of Dune begins to do some stuff like that because he begins to see himself as above everyone. Paul is an allegory to Luke Skywalker only insofar as they were both trying to answer prophecy that they didn't necessarily know that they were a part of. But Luke takes the entirely different pathway from Paul. Emperor Paul isn't as good of a man as Luke Skywalker. Even the Last Jedi version of Luke Skywalker is a Boy Scout compared to what happens with Paul Atreides, to say nothing of Emperor Leto II. Anyway, but I digress. This is not a Dune podcast. But the point being, I would have expected that from House Atreides. I didn't expect to see it in a Star Wars production. Now, we can debate as to whether or not it was good for the overall narrative. The narrative structure was very strong. Do I want torture to be a part of Star Wars? Well, I might not have much of a choice, because certainly we've had torture in Star Wars in the last century. Han Solo gets tortured in The Empire Strikes Back. But having him lean down next to the hot irons on that thing on the Cloud City is a far cry from playing the death wails of alien children as the Empire murders them all. I don't know. I didn't like it. So that's my answer to what did you like least about season 1. Nathan, what did you like least about season 1?
Well, K2SO's role in season 1 is non-existent. He's not there at all. We see security droids that are the same model as him, but it's not him, at least as far as we know. And we also don't get any real information on any of the other members of Rogue One. So I just would have liked to have seen more story, which I think that's a good, bad thing to have if the people watching it are like, we just want more of it. That's kind of good. But yeah, we're missing other stories. And we are going to get some about K2SO, so I'm excited to see that in season 2. But I would have liked to have seen that even further back.
We did have one, though.
Did have one what?
I mean, we did have Melshi from his prison partner.
Oh, that's true.
Yes,
true.
We did, although I don't consider him a very big part of Rogue One. Like, you could watch Rogue One.
I mean, that's fair. Like, he got a lot more screen time this time in Andor.
He did. Yeah, you could.
than his couple of lines that he did in
You could
Andor.
absolutely miss that guy was in Rogue One.
Yeah. Although, he can always say, the actor can always say, hey, I was in the movie too. He's definitely got that. Yeah.
And he could pull a Seth Franken Rollins and saying they cut my line. So
he can. Yeah. Darn you, Serpent Society. Anyway, okay. Derek, what did you like least about season 1?
There's only one thing that tops the list here. Everything else is phenomenal about the show, but I can't swim. Oh, yeah. That was a dagger to the heart, man. That was the dagger to the heart.
I loved it and hated it at the same time.
Because at the end of episode 9, man, when they find out, right, that they fried the whole floor because they finally found out what happened, right, that they were, when people were released and then they brought back and I can't remember the old guy's name, basically had a stroke when he only had like 30 days before he was supposed to be set free. And, they put him out of his misery. And, Kino, after Andor keeps telling him, we're never going to have another chance. We're never going to have another chance. And he asks him, how many guys, on how many guards on the floor? And he says, never more than 12. And I literally pumped my fist at the end of that episode, the way that ended, because I was just like, okay, Andy Serkis, obviously love him as a phenomenal actor and everything he's done with us, and all of our sci-fi and fantasy stuff that we enjoy. He's become, one of those top things. And I was just so happy. I said, all right, man, he's going to be on board, episode 10, one way out, we got this whole thing. And then right at the end, man, like I said, just dagger to my heart. And I still have headcanon that he survived. He figured out, he just waited till everybody else that couldn't swim got pushed off. And then he used those dead bodies as floating devices and was able to make his own raft. And,
that part I said about this is way too grim dark to be Star Wars? You are, just proving my point. Holy crap, that sounds like a Warhammer 40K story right there. All the other Space Marines in my platoon were killed, but I'm the only member of my chapter that can't swim. It's a fault in my gene seed. Well, how did you survive, Captain? Well, I made a raft of all the other Marines' corpses, and once I floated back to the shore, I did make sure to harvest their gene seed so I can carry on their memory and take it back to our DNA vault. That is a Warhammer 40K story, if ever I heard one. But yes.
Ants do this in real life.
They do.
But we're not insects, Nathan. We're supposed to treat each other with more respect.
Of course you're not. We aren't insects.
Well, unless if you're in The Last of Us, then we're the fungal ants.
Then we're fungus, right? Yeah, we're fungi, not insects either.
But
anyways, but excellent point about that's the one thing you didn't like. Yes, although that just proves how great that writing was, because here we are 4 years later and you're still like, no, Kino, he deserved to get out. He deserved to escape.
So
what's great?
The great thing about that writing is they didn't have to look at the camera and have Andy Serkis say, okay, now I'm in on your deal. I'm totally joining you. From just him saying never more than 12, that, okay, he is totally in.
And at the end, when we find out he can't swim, he doesn't have to look at the camera and follow that up with, I guess that means I'm now going to die, instead of being able to escape to freedom. Which, frankly, some sci-fi series here in the New Millennium have devolved to that level of writing. However,
that's a lot of exposition nowadays.
It is. I recently read an explanation as to why that's happening, though, and it almost made me cry. It was an article about Netflix and their desire to increase the number of streams or the number of times that people watch it, what we used to call ratings, right? And Netflix had told writers at their in-house production company to put more exposition into their stories, at which point the writers were like, well, this is a really weird note. Why are you telling us to put more exposition? Most of the time, y'all are telling us to cut it out, show, not tell, right? And the bean counters at Netflix said, well, our research shows that most people are looking at their phone while we're streaming in the background. So if you have the characters narrate their own actions through exposition, the viewers, quote unquote, will be more likely to know what's happening because they can just listen to it while they look at their phone instead of having to watch the screen to find out what's happening. So they wanted more audio because people treat it almost as background noise to have Netflix streaming in the background while they do whatever they're working on, if they're working from home, or if they're just sitting on the couch doom scrolling while they're running Netflix in the background.
That just means it's poor writing then.
It's absolutely poor writing because it's not compelling enough to make them pay attention to the film. But it also means that Netflix is rewarding the current behavior patterns of their subscribers by saying, because they have research to show the authors, the writers, that the shows and stories and movies on Netflix already that have a lot of exposition get more views, more streams, because people will do that so they can be like, I haven't been watching, I don't know what's going on in this episode. As opposed to, oh, well, Dude Man just said, and now I'm going to open this container of acid to show you what was the murder weapon. That kind of thing, right? And so that is why we have had, I'm just going to go ahead and say it, things like Doctor Who that used to be way better written are so much expository now because the BBC is, of course, doing this already because everything in our entertainment seems to begin in Britain and work its way across the Atlantic Ocean. And so this trend of whole lot of exposition is only going to get worse. Not to be too much of a, pessimist here. But at the very least, for Netflix in-house production, they've literally received orders from the company to add more exposition.
Won't matter anyways. They'll cancel it after season 2. So,
yeah. Anyways, okay, let's move on to question number 3. And instead of it being what connections did you draw to the rest of the Star Wars galaxy, as it often is, since we're looking ahead to season 2 of Andor, let's talk about the stuff that we know for sure is going to happen. Nathan Head kind of kicked us off down this road because he was talking about how we know that Alan Tudyk is involved, and so there's going to be some K2SO, not just a K2 type droid, but the droid himself is going to show up, and hopefully we'll get to see the scene where Andor steals him and hacks him and reprograms him for the rebellion. But if not, at least we know he's going to be in it. Derek, do you have any other things definitive that have been announced that you want to mention before we turn it over to Nathan? Because I think he has a list.
Well, I mean, obviously, just the returning crew for the most part, right? I mean, obviously the few people that passed, I'm sure the actor that plays Nemec, right? What's his name? Alex Lawther will probably still have some voiceovers, right? I mean, we might get a small flashback, but to be fair, I mean, they only spent a few days together anyways.
Right.
So I'd imagine that there'll be a bit more with the manifesto, which would be really good. But obviously, the big thing is Ben Mendelsohn, right, as director Krennic. I mean, that's the big thing that is getting us. Obviously, we're going to get Forrest Whitaker again to reprise Saw Gerrera. Is obviously confirmed. We've actually seen some of the footage, right? To Nathan's point, right? We've seen Alan Tudyk, the behind the scenes. If you look at the quick scene, you actually can see Alan Tudyk with the whole ping pong balls and the way they do the CGI, because obviously he portrays K2SO in those scenes. Usually he's on the buckets and stuff, right, to make him look like he's 8 feet tall. But he's actually in the ship with Diego Luna as Cassian. So we got that. We know we're gonna have more political scenes with Genevieve O'Reilly as Mon Mothma, and we definitely looks interesting. We definitely see, like, I'm guessing it's Chandrilla, where they're kind of showing the people starting to rebel, and there's probably going to be some type of mass murder scene that's going to happen at this point, because it looks like a more well-off place. It's not like looking like peasants and peons like Ferrix, the working class people, right? It actually looks like a higher level society. So just overall, just phenomenal excitement just going on with what they got. But we obviously see Darth Vader as well. We get a small cameo with that. So I don't know if they have announced if Hayden Christensen's going to be reprising that, or if that's somebody else that'll be this in the suit, portraying Darth Vader. So
I kind of hope it's Hayden, but I expect it to be Dude Man from the scenes at the end of Rogue One. What was that? You know what, Nathan? Go ahead and talk about your list. I'll look that up while you talk about your list.
Very good. All right. So the first thing that we know is that this is all going to start on April 22nd. That's when the first episodes drop. And I say episodes because 3 episodes are dropping that day. So the whole first arc is dropping. And then the next week, on the 29th of April, the whole second arc. So all 4 arcs are dropping as 3 episode blocks each week. So it's only going to be
done in a month.
Yeah, done in a month, including the month of May. So, Scott, you sort of get your wish. We have a couple of movie length stories. The 3 episodes would be about a movie length, right? So it's like we're getting 2 movies in May and 2 in April. It's great. We know that it's going to cover 4 years. So it's 4 different stories in 4 different years. Diego Luna has said that it's going to answer a lot of questions that we didn't even know that we had from Rogue One. I'm not quite sure how that's going to work, but this is what he has said. Let's see. Now, as far as who's going to be
Spencer Wilding is the name of the guy who did the Vader suit in Rogue One. So while I would love for it to be Hayden, I expect that it will be Spencer Wilding or someone like that. It's more of a guy behind the mask, and then we'll just dub in the Vader blot voice.
Now, as far as who we know is going to be in it, Wikipedia does have a list of starring actors that include Diego Luna, obviously Cassian Andor, Adria. Yeah, I hope he's in it. Adria Arjona, who is Bix Kayleen, last seen having been saved from interrogation and torture by Cassian and escaping from Phoenix. Kyle Solar, who plays Cyril Karn, last seen saving Dedra Miro on Phoenix. Denise Gao, who is Dedra Miro, last seen being saved by Cyril Karn on Rick's Road. However, we do see her in the preview for season 2, talking to Ben Mendelsohn's character, Director Krennic. So we know that she's going to be in there doing that. We also have Genevieve O'Reilly, who plays Mon Mothma. We know she survives because we see her in Return of the Jedi.
Let's see her Rogue One, so...
Right. Muhammad Bahir, who plays Wilman Pak, last seen escaping with Bix Kayleen. Joplin Sibtain, who plays Brasso, also seen escaping with Bix. And this one I thought was very interesting. Lends some credence to Derek's theory. Don't know exactly which character this person is playing. Andy Serkis is listed. Yeah, that was my reaction. Could it be that we have Kino Loy? Could this be flashbacks? Could this be he survived? Could it be that we're getting a little bit of Snoke already? Because Andy Serkis is one of the few people who have played multiple characters in Star Wars. Multiple, like, starring role voice characters.
Or is he a clone on the prison? Because we joked about that he was a clone in himself on the prisons, right? That he was always the first shift daemon, at least in each prison on its own, right? Because obviously, if he would have said Kino Loy over the thing, would have been one thing, but he would have been a clone in every major facility of the prison.
Yeah, I remember us making that joke.
Loys.
Yeah, I actually think that Nathan's theory that it's going to be some kind of version of Snoke is way more likely than Kino Loy the clone.
I'm sure he's just doing some CGI character alien.
Yeah, it's probably some alien. It's an entirely new character. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, nothing on that says that he is playing a particular character. Now, what I thought was interesting, though, was what was not listed on Wikipedia, but that we know is going to be in season 2. Forrest Whitaker as Saul Guerrera. We know he's going to be in there. Alan Tudyk, K2SO, was not listed. Stellan Skarsgård was not listed for Luthien Rahl, and Ben Mendelsohn was not listed for Director Krennic. But we saw all of them in the behind the scenes for season 2. So we know they're going to be there. I'm not sure why Wikipedia doesn't have them listed. Now, that could mean that Wikipedia's starring is outdated and might actually mean that Andy Serkis isn't appearing in season 2, that's just still there from season 1. So caution, we don't know for 100% certain that Andy Serkis is going to be in it.
Okay. But now I kind of hope he is, so we can figure out what the heck is going on. Also, he's Andy Serkis. I want to watch more of him as much as I can. I am one of the people who's actually, despite the way that The Hobbit turned out, I'm looking forward to the Smeagol movies that Serkis is working on.
Maybe he'll play one of the fish aliens so he can actually swim.
Good times. Good times.
He needs to tell the story of the Scorpion and the Frog, but the story from the Legend of the Five Rings version, where at the end, after the Scorpion has stabbed the Frog, and the Frog is like, "Oh no, now we're both going to drown. Why did you do this?" The Scorpion doesn't say, "It's in my nature, I'm a Scorpion." The Scorpion says, "I can swim."
Yep.
I was lying the whole time. This was a trick to get onto your back so I could kill you.
That's why it becomes Snoke. That's how Kino Loy becomes Snoke.
Oh gosh.
That would be amazeballs, and is a perfect segue for question 4 after Nathan says what he was going to say.
Well, no, go ahead and do question 4 and just let me go first, because this would be cool for it.
Question 4, what do you want to happen in Andor Season 2? Nathan, what do you want to happen in Andor Season 2?
Kino Loy shows up. Turns out he's an Imperial agent. He was part of the Empire the whole time, maybe even an ISB agent. And Cassian asks him, "How did you survive?" And Kino looks at him and says, "I can swim."
Yeah, it was all a clever facade for you to let down your guard and help me somehow crack the rebel cell.
We were done making these parts for the project that you don't know is the Death Star, and we needed to
Stardust.
find a way to get rid of all the prisoners. So we did this whole thing instead of just killing them, which would have been a whole lot simpler.
And more efficient. But we're the Empire. We do neither simple nor efficient.
It gave them hope.
Yes. Yes.
It's all part of Palpatine's plan the whole time.
Yeah.
We're all this.
Now, what do I actually want to see? I want to see more parts of the rebellion forming and coming together to form the larger whole. I want to see parts of stories that cross over the different blocks. I don't want it to be 4 individual stories that have nothing to do with each other. I want to see, okay, this happened in this story. And while the next story, the next block of 3 episodes isn't about that, somehow what happened back then still matters. Not is the focus, maybe not even is a big deal, but maybe there's a character that we picked up in an earlier one and we just see that they're still around. Or maybe we see that they're not, and that's significant because, hey, we picked this guy up, 2 blocks ago, and he passed away between blocks 2 and 3, and that's giving us motivation to do something like some sort of connected tissue. So it's not just story, isolated, siloed, different story, isolate, silo, different story, isolate, silo, different story.
Yeah. Cool. Those are good ones. Especially hope you're correct about Kino Loy and somehow this is the beginning of Snoke. That'd be amazeballs. Okay, here's what I want to see happen in Andor Season 2. At some point, Cassian and or K2SO need to get some cargo from point A to point B without any Imperial entanglements. And so they have to go to hire a particular freighter. And I want said freighter to be crewed by Chewbacca and Han Solo. And I want it to be Jonas and Alden Ehrenreich doing younger Chewie and younger Han in this era of the budding rebellion. And part of that can help explain. So very small, very cameo, that's fine. But just like a little drop in the bucket to help explain a bit how Han is well aware of the rebellion and he wants to steer clear of it. In fact, if we could have a moment where they, have to deal with the Empire and he's all upset with Cassian and K2 for not warning them ahead of time, that would be even more in keeping with some reason that Han's got some simmering, I'm not big on those rebel people. They've, I've run afoul of the Empire because of them before, and I'm just trying to keep my head down, that kind of thing. And I'd love to just have any excuse to see Alden Ehrenreich and Jonas portray Han and Chewie again. And if it goes over well, we can still hold out hope. Again, that gives me hope for Solo 2, which could explain the whole thing about how Kira goes and trains with Darth Maul and, Han and Chewie go and get mixed up with Jabba the Hutt. And again, we could have a tie-in with Donald Glover's Lando series with Alden Ehrenreich and Chewbacca and so on and so forth. So yeah, that and I'd also enjoy seeing, if not a young adult version, because the timeline doesn't work out quite well enough, young adult version of Luke and or Leia. I'd like to see younger versions of them, like sort of what we did in Kenobi, but a little further along the timeline than those 2 kids, because I still think that someday soon Disney is going to Lucasfilm is going to finally have the stones to make another Galactic Civil War era storyline with Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia and Han Solo and all of them. But we'll just have to deal with the fact that they've been recast. And I don't think this is the end of the world. We've had multiple James T. Kirks at this point in time. We've already had a few other people portray. Thank you, Derek. Way more than 2. We've had other people portray different versions or timelines or eons of Luke and Leia and Han and Chewie and Lando. And the sun hasn't collapsed on itself. That only happens when Starkiller Base is around. And so I think it'd be fine, and it would be a chance for me to help younger generations like Maddie and my little Padawan who plays Rey and is going with me to SC Comic Con this coming Saturday as Rey once again. Woohoo! That they will have a chance to watch why we think Luke, Leia, Han, and Chewie and Lando and all those are like the pinnacle of Star Wars heroes. Because to them, sadly, A New Hope and even Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi are moldy old movies from last century, right? A modern, not retelling of A New Hope, Empire, or Return of the Jedi, but stories that involve those characters being heroic would really go a long way to help solidify that legacy. And plus, we would all have so much fun with it because of the nostalgia and stuff. So yeah, anyway, that's what I want to see happen in season 2. Derek, what do you want to see happen in season 2?
Well, here's what's going to happen, Scott, to have yours almost come true of what you were saying. It won't be Cassian and K2SO running into Han and Chewie. They're actually going to be carrying that coaxium from Memphis Nest.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I could dig it.
Because there is a picture of Erin Kellerman, the young lady who plays Memphis Nest, at the premiere of Andor season 2. So
okay, so we'll get a name drop of Han Solo and or Chewbacca,
maybe
or Lando.
Yep, or that'll just be some type of reference that I got it from a mercenary smuggler and
Corellian
his walking right. Carpet. So
right. Han Solo and his doggy. All right.
But no, I want because obviously this is question 4 we're talking about here, right? So this is everything we want. I want basically all the cameo Easter eggs that we can get in this 12 episode arc. And I want it to be the full-fledged, Picard season 3 type style cameos. I want Avengers Endgame cameo type deal. I want obviously we can get all of the actual Rogue One people, even with a, Jyn Erso cameo and Galen Erso cameo at some point here. I do want a Thrawn cameo. Because this is early on. With Thrawn,
before he left. Yeah.
Yep. So obviously you could get both, that. I do want, along with Thrawn, you're going to get Phoenix Squadron, and I want all them, which is including a Freddie Prinze Jr. playing Kanan.
Ooh.
Even though he says he wouldn't, I want him to at least appear on screen. He doesn't have to
everybody
say
says everybody's all about never again.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, he's not going to get his own live act. He's just going to get his one cameo there just to be in the background, something where, we see Phoenix Squadron with, Zeb and Hera and Sabine and all them, right? So I want that.
We've already got the Zeb model. We've already got the Zeb,
and Steve Bloom obviously, did the voice acting for that as well, like he did for the TV show. So we obviously have Hera and Sabine. Obviously, they'd have to get a different actor to play Ezra in this case, but again, we could do that. But everybody else, because we know we see the ghost in Rogue One, so we know it's there. And obviously, there's the rumors that when they and even all the way back in the original Star Wars, when they're on the right before they do the attack on the Death Star, the run on the attack of the Death Star, you can hear them calling Phoenix Squadron or something like that, reporting, or something like that on the intercom. I can't remember whether it's true or not, but it's kind of mumbled. But anyways, there's that. But yeah, I want all that. Plus, like I said, you got Saw Gerrera, you got that. I want Chirrut and Baze. I want a small cameo of them because they're going to be taking place. One thing you didn't call out, Nathan, that we know for sure, they are taking place on Jeddah. Like Skull is going to actually be set up on Jeddah at this point in one of the arcs. So we know we're obviously going to get Tubes as well as making his cameo, right? So give me Baze and Chirrut at some point. Again, even if they're still just the Guardian of Wills at this point. And they're sitting over there, being, they don't have to be in, they could be in robes or something like that from protecting the Jedi Temple at this point, right? When maybe the part of the story, one of the stories might be them mining kyber crystals then, right? And taking that from the temple, right? When the Empire was basically trying to construct the last little bit to put the super laser weapon together for the Death Star. So
we saw two tubes in season 1, didn't we?
We have tubes. Yeah, you have tubes.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, I want them all. I want, again, everybody coming back, and then the ones that we haven't seen yet. Just give me everything. I want all the cameos and Easter eggs. Again, even if they're just there, just to, background characters, Like you said, they don't even have to say anything. I just want them there because I know that they're supposed to be there at some point in this timeline universe. At different points would be phenomenal. Obviously, like I said, even if they there's no reason that we can't get Tarkin. I mean, why can't we have another CGI version of Tarkin at least working with Krennic, even if he's a hologram, right? And he's giving some type of interaction with Krennic, right? Any of these types of things, would just be wonderful stuff. And if they can get anything for some of the characters in some of the other books that I've read, whether it's through the Tarkin series, whether it's through the Rebel series, or whether it's through the Thrawn series stuff, the actual canon stuff, if they can give any of those types of Easter eggs as well to link some of those characters, right? Like we could have Ensign Vili Vanto from Thrawn. You could get Price or at some point in her career before she's disposed of in Lothal. Again, you've got what was the banker guy? I can't remember that was in Rebel A New Dawn that took place in that story. I can't remember the separatist banker guy that was the part droid and all that. I can't remember that.
What Tambor?
It wasn't Wat Tambor. Like obviously, he's from that. There's another guy, I can't remember his name now. That was in A New Dawn, the series. He was something else, I can't remember. But anyways, any of those types of cameos too. Again, from novels. Again, that's a hard push on those. But like I said, from the TV shows and anything else that we can get from Rogue One, just to be able to tie it to Nathan's point, right? That make it feel like it's a seamless transition from arc to arc to arc to arc. I think would really help. Just again, that's what I want at this point, right? Like, give me the good storyline, give me all that stuff, but just throw those little sprinkles in just to make me happy. That's what I would want.
Cool. I like all the things that you just said. And even with all the episodes that we're getting, I don't think we'll have enough time to do every one of those things you just said. But
that was gonna be the answer to question 5. What do we actually think is going to happen?
Yes,
and I'm going to be like,
question 5, what do you actually expect to happen? So this is not the wish list.
Out of all those things, I expect maybe one of those cameos might actually be a surprise. Maybe one.
Right.
That's my over under is at 1. And that's going to be like, yep, that's just, I'm going with under 1.5, I guess it would be. So I'm going to go under 1.5 cameo.
Yeah. All right. Nathan, what do you expect to happen in season 2? So this is actually going to happen.
All right, so we know that we're going 4 different years. So I expect, how I said that I want to make sure that we don't get 4 siloed stories? Mm-hmm. I expect that we're going to get 4 siloed stories with not much connecting them. I know that we're supposed to get lots of answers to things, and I'm a little bit afraid that it's going to be, okay, here's 3 episodes about the answer to this minute detail in Rogue One. Here is 3
where
episodes.
Cassian got the gun that he gave to K2SO when K2SO was all, Cassian won't give me a gun. Yeah.
We're going to find out why he doesn't give him a gun anymore.
That's right. Yeah, it's in. That whole story arc will be why you don't give K2SO guns, except for this one gun.
Right. Yes. And where did we get this one gun? What is this one gun? It's going to be the gun that K2SO arrested him with or something.
Because technically Jin's the one who gave him the gun, right? In Rogue One. So. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah. But anyway.
Regardless, point being, I'm very afraid that it's going to be, especially with Diego talking about how, we're going to get tons of answers to questions you didn't even know you had. Star Wars fans in general, ourselves included, have lots of questions about things that most people wouldn't think that you have questions about. We have questions about, hey, that one alien we saw in the background in the cantina that one time with her sister? Why do we only see that one of her in the Clone Wars?
What's the difference between a Shistavan and Wolfman and a different a Deathel. Yeah, Deathel. Why are there 2 different species of Wolfman? Anyway.
Yeah, we have these questions. And if we're going to get all of these questions answered, it may just be an encyclopedic, okay, we have to check off why did this? Why was Luthen's lasers, why did they look like lightsabers? Why did this? Why did this? And fail to actually give a story.
And of course, the burning question that we've all had from Rogue One: who is Bor Gullet, and how does he work? Anyway.
I expect that to play into the torture of Bix. I think whatever they were doing. Would it be
wild if Bor Gullet was the last remaining member of that species that they thought were all dead, but really he's still alive?
So Saw Gerrera is not that bad of a guy if he's kept one of them. He found one and saved him.
He is, yeah, exactly. He's a conservationist.
Bad. Yes, that's what we call that.
Hey, some of us are for zoos, some of us are against zoos. So, but we're still trying to keep those endangered species alive. So
this is less zoo and more holding somebody captive.
Mm-hmm. No, holding somebody captive and throwing them in the gorilla compound.
Yes.
All right. Here's what I expect to happen for real in season 2. I do think that, as Derek pointed out, since the young lady who played Infant's Nest has been seen at the Erin Kellerman has been seen at the premiere of Andor season 2, the odds of her character from Solo being involved are pretty high. And so I think that will happen, but I don't think Alden will actually show up. However, I do think Jonas will show up as Chewbacca. So we may see Chewbacca talking to Infant's Nest. But then I also expect, that Mon Mothma's husband is going to betray the rebellion, and perhaps even specifically her personally, to some Imperial contact in exchange for cash monies, because he seems to be way more about the high society, highfalutin lifestyle.
He's got a gambling addiction, remember?
Yeah, exactly. And he's got debts to pay. And we all know from Star Wars lore that when you owe money to some crime lord, you will do crazy things to, pay off your debt, whether that be Han Solo or DJ or any number of other scoundrels who have betrayed people for money in the Star Wars galaxy. And so I think that is the one major plot point that is going to be happening during whatever Chandrilla-related story arc we have going on. We will see Mr. Mon Mothma betray his wife, or at the very least betray the rebellion itself, if not his wife in person. And I think that might actually cause their daughter to suffer. And so that will be what leads to a split between her and him. If not, Mon Mothma having to outright, fight and or kill him during some escape from the Empire. Because she eventually does cut ties and, commit to the rebellion full time. But if any of those things and more happen in Andor season 2, you can be sure that we're going to talk about them here on What a Piece of Junk. And Derek is going to add one more thing.
Well, I was just going to say, I was joking with the season 5 or the season 2 just being the one thing too. There's a couple of things to your point though, Scott. He most likely will portray Mon Mothma, and that's where I think then, as the result, they're going to kill all those Chandrellans.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that's what's going to be the payback, and that's what, to your point, the daughter might be in that at that point as part of that. She was obviously very into Chandrellan,
society.
Well, yeah, but what we say the olden ways, right?
Tradition,
yeah. Right? So she might be on this, voyage, or finding herself retreat, and she gets murdered, right?
Well, she goes over there to get ready for her wedding because she wants to be a Chandrillan trap wife.
Yeah, or she's doing some studying, right? Study abroad, right? She's a little bit older. She's studying abroad, and she just happens to be, or maybe she actually, tries to take up and follow in her mom because she realizes her dad's a dick, and and she's going out there and protesting, and what happens, right? You have all these people get mass murdered. So, but I agree with you. I think that's going to happen. That's a pretty good one. The other thing is I unfortunately, which was actually going to be part of my other number 4, I hope, is that Biggs and Brasso and B2 and all them survive. I don't think they're going to survive.
No, they're going to get killed. He did, she did, they all did.
Exactly.
But no, I expect that you're right about the atrocity on Chandrilla. And I think that the weapon of mass destruction that the Empire uses will be much more low-tech, because it's not going to be the Death Star, because we don't have that yet. It's going to be Inferno troopers, some kind of flame troopers, or even the K2 droids with the flame attachments like we saw in the weird flashback thing in The Mandalorian.
Or maybe Dark Troopers version 1.0.
Could be a Dark Trooper. Yeah. Something along the lines of we as the Empire have plausible deniability.
And that's who Andy Serkis is playing.
Could be.
To all of the Dark Troopers.
It's all CGI, right? So,
well, if we have early on versions of Dark Troopers, we could have the T-1000 Arnold Schwarzenegger style half metal face, or Vance, the bounty hunter from Star Wars Marvel Comics, where your cybernetic cyborg is like half flesh face, half droid face. Because remember in The Mandalorian, when Moff Gideon is bragging about his Dark Troopers, he's all, we finally got rid of all the worthless biological components, implying that in earlier versions, it was part man, part machine, all fascist. I mean, cop.
and maybe that's what happens to Kino Loy, because he didn't jump. And so when the Imperial came back to the prison,
cybernetic animated dead,
the people that were still captured there, that they recaptured, and then they forced them, because they couldn't let them. I mean, they can let them serve out their prison, but they're not going to work for them at that point, right? They're just going to rather die. So, and they can't let them back into society because they'll just snitch on them. So
of course, the way we defeat that version of Kino Loy is we drop him into a lake, because since he's mostly metal, he still can't swim. Just sinks to the bottom.
That's how I know.
No, he'll be sinking and hit the button. In emergencies, I can be used as a flotation device.
I thought he was just going to hold up one thumb on the way down.
Oh, yes, there you go.
One way out.
Okay. One way out. It's down through the lava. I don't know why he turned into Arnold other than the obvious Terminator reference there. Actually, if we get a reference to Vance the Bounty Hunter, I will jump up and down, because yay, Star Wars Marvel Comics. Really cool.
Maybe a Dr. Aphra.
Honestly. Oh, wouldn't that be amazeballs? This year, by the way, marks 10 years of Dr. Aphra being a character in Star Wars. She was created for a comic 10 years ago, 2015. So, yeah. Okay, well, before we sign off, let's do Derek's favorite part of the show, and that is, of course, what Star Wars t-shirt are we wearing this week? Derek, what you got?
I have my Happy Face shirt on.
This is my happy face. You don't know the power of my good side. Good times. Yeah, so Vader as This Is My Happy Face. Excellent. I have a fairly simple but parody shirt on myself this week, and it is a BMX parody, Star Wars Rebels, but they're BMXing it on their BMX.
Is that a new shirt?
It is a new shirt. I got it about a month ago from not TeePublic. Yeah, I think it was from TeePublic. I think it was from TeePublic, actually. So yes, it's them riding BMX bikes as though they were in, Bandits or one of those other 1980s BMX movies. I love that we even have girl rebel trooper on a bike with her ponytail is flying out under her helmet. So yeah, it's very rad, absolutely rad, very 80s, very Star Wars. Nathan?
All right. Well, I'm taking advantage of the merch section of this because my t-shirt has absolutely nothing on it. It's just a blank tee. But I do have
Black
Chrysanthemum. Found this guy at Scott's direction at Ollie's.
I still have mine in the box.
I still have mine in the box too. And you might be thinking, Nathan, how can you possibly have yours in the box if you have yours open right here? And the answer is I bought two.
Because it's a Chewie. It's a Wookiee. Why wouldn't he?
Exactly. Yeah.
How much was it?
I did take the price tag off of my other one.
How much is it? $10?
$8.99, I believe.
$8.99. Okay.
I like the fact that he has the classic silver border Star Wars logo of Kenner and the Kenner logo of Kenner figures of Yore, but it's the Book of Boba Fett inside the silver border. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty cool. Also, this is the first Star Wars figure in the Kenner style that I've ever seen in solid cardboard, no plastic bubble. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's just because he's huge or they were trying to save on plastic.
Well, they've got cool things with him. He's got this cup, big golden cup.
Yes.
He's got a few extra hands. I haven't been able to get his original hands off to replace them with these other hands, but he does have them.
He's going to show you he's got that Wookiee strength, and he's got those energy knuckles. That was so cool that he had the energy brass knucks.
He's got a gun that I have misplaced. Don't ever give me a gun. I apparently just misplaced them. He has a little energy thing too to go over one of his hands, but the coolest thing that he came with, in my opinion, is and Maloran fruit.
Oh, nice.
Gotta eat.
See, yeah.
All right, so here's the picture of the accessories, so y'all can see what Nathan has lost. So the
gun.
energy, the gun is just I think it's a TR-71 rifle or something along those lines.
Looks like an assault rifle, yeah.
Yeah, it's not a bowcaster. And the energy beam thingies are for his energy knuckles, his electric knuckles.
His fisticuffs.
Yeah, if you look on the front, you can see where you can add them to his hands to be all like,
Does he glow in the
let's
dark?
go. I don't think
It is not.
Oh,
No.
that's so cool though.
But yeah, I'm excited because it's a Wookiee. And if he shows up in Andor season 2, that would be really cool. And he was definitely around during that time period, so he absolutely could.
Do they have others there too, or just Black Crescent?
He was the only one in that style. They, of course, had many other figures.
They had several Black series, but as you can tell, he's Kenner series, not Black series.
Right.
They had several Black series, Derek, and they were closer to like $15 a piece, I think.
But
of course, way more. Yeah. Well, I don't know. Retail for Black series is like $30, $35 these days, which is ridiculous. And it was some of the more weird ones that didn't sell. So
of course, it's all the leftovers.
We had plenty of Jyn Erso, but we also had several Ponda Baba and Dr. Avazan in Black series. And then there was
the Jyn Erso have been cool.
Yeah, it was Lando Calrissian from Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, the Tantil Screech version.
Oh, Tantil.
Yeah. Just
like
which is a cool character.
The Palace card, not very well sought after.
Yeah, because he's just not that useful in the card game. But anyway, now at one time he was, man. When I went to a sealed official Jabba's Palace sealed deck tournament one time and pulled Tantil out of my pack, so I just was wrecking shop as light side. It was awesome.
Yeah, but oftentimes in the sealed deck stuff, if you got a main character at all, they were generally a bit higher on the power level than most other characters.
I was just upset they didn't make him an undercover spy.
Or at least have him interact with being undercover in some
That's
way.
what I'm saying. Like, to me, he should have been like the dark side border, just like Bosch and TK421.
He does interact with undercover. Once per game, undercover may deploy on Temtel from reserve deck, reshuffle. But that's also
it would have been way cooler if you didn't look off to the side. If you had just been like, I'm pulling this right out of the dome, baby.
Yes.
I got your game text.
I'm sure I got it somewhere in my hoard of cards right here.
It's right here. Yeah. Tamtail Screech. I've got it right on the screen right underneath my camera. Yeah. He also makes your rebels immune to None Shall Pass.
Which was really what was. You could say it was really what was helping me. Yeah.
Yeah. That one is more powerful than the one I'm looking at.
Mm.
The immunity to None Shall Pass actually helped me out a bit in that tournament because, well, that was a key defense for Darkside Jabba the Hutt deal. All right, we're getting way far afield, but we are still talking about merch. And if you guys out there want your own cool What a Piece of Junk merchandise, or from, say, any of our other Fandom Podcast Network shows like Blood of Kings or Hair Metal or the Lethal Mullet Crew, anything like that, you can go on over to the TeePublic store over at teepublic.com and search up Fandom Podcast Network in the search bar, and you can find t-shirts, mouse pads, pillows, iPad cases, coffee mugs, etc., etc., etc. At this point, you guys all know the kinds of things that we sell, and so please go check it out. And check out the rest of the Fandom Podcast Network worth of podcasts. Nathan, please tell people where they can find them out there on the interwebs.
Absolutely. You can find us anywhere your pods are cast, and that would include Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play, and of course, right here on YouTube. I say right here because that's my favorite. You can find us on Facebook, What a Piece of Junk, a Star Wars podcast, or you can email us, whatapieceofjunkpod@gmail.com. On Twitter, we're at WhatWars. On Instagram, you can find the entire Fandom Podcast Network at Fandom Podcast Network. And regardless of where you find us, but particularly if you find us on Apple Podcasts, we would love for you to leave us a review. And Derek, why would we love for people to leave us a review?
So obviously, one of the reasons we like it is because the algorithm helps new viewers, new listeners find us out there. We really, again, anyone out there that's listening to this the first time, we appreciate it. We hope you join us on What a Piece of Junk Facebook page. Continue to come to us as in the next several weeks we'll be starting to broadcast episode covering season 2 of Andor. But yeah, we really want that because at the end of the day, we need to make sure that we're not having to sit there and just spew all this manifesto of ourselves out and nobody listen to it. Otherwise, it's just going to be lost in the void. So again, we want to share our knowledge out there, and we do that by getting good likes and reviews, so that way we can be at the top of the list. Because obviously we're doing this for fun. We're not one to be pushing sponsorships and getting pushed, cheating the system. We're trying to do it the legit way, right? We're trying to do it for the rebellion.
Yeah, because if you guys don't listen, it's just Ezra out there on his broadcast tower repeating the podcast with his commentary added into what we say. And we love and respect Mr. Bridger, but we want more than just him listening. You can't stop the signal, baby. Oh, wait, that's the wrong property. But you get my point. You get my point. So even if you have to crawl into an abandoned smokestack above your somewhat on-again, off-again girlfriend's shop and tap out the message in Morse code, please don't stop listening. Yes. So thanks, everybody, for joining us. And until next time, please always remember to respect each other and respect each other's fandom. All right, Nathan, punch it.